I remember a time when living at the lake house was all I ever wanted. We used to go up there every summer. It was fun up there. Nothing bad ever happened. Everyone seemed to be happy. Everyone, being my sister, my mother, and I, was happy. Our father had left us back when I was just a child. My sister is a few years older than I am. My mother chose to never remarry. She said it was not right to marry another man when we already had a happy little family. I guess I always thought the lake kept us together and sane. I never thought anything could harm us when we were there. My sister and I used to get scared at the city house. So when I was about 10 years old, my sister and I asked Mom if we could move here for good, away from crime. We thought she would not say yes to us, but we gave it a shot. To our joy, she agreed that we could live there. She said she would homeschool us. This overjoyed us. We loved our mama, and were glad to hear that she would get to be our teacher and our mama. Of course, I thought she would have to teach 2 different classes, seeing as I was the younger one, and I had not learned much yet, since I was still 10. So we packed up our bags and moved to our warm and cozy lake house. It turned out that we were not the only ones who felt safe there. There were a few other families there. Mom said she would homeschool their kids as well for free, and they all agreed. All our families got along out there, whereas back in the city there were always families fighting. Our lake house was perfect. It was big enough for our small little family. Mom had her own room. I was okay with sharing mine with my big sister. It made me feel even safer, so we stayed at our own little lake house. When my sister and her classmates were being taught their lesson for the day, I would go outside and play with my classmate. During the hot days, we would get into our swimsuits and go swimming. We all pretended to be fish people, and we had to get away from the big ship trying to catch us. The ship was just a big old tree sitting in the middle of the lake, so we had to swim away from it as one of our classmates stood in the tree catching people. If you stopped swimming at any point in time, you would have to fake drown. It was a fun game. The older kids did not get it like we did. I loved being out here. For 5 years we all did the same thing every day. I liked having a routine, and so did the other kids and parents. But everything changed when I was 15. My sister got very sick. She was 17 at this time. It was scary. No one had phones or even cars. We always walked to the town when we needed food and such. None of us had money either to take her to the doctors, so Mama said she would take care of her, and that when she was better, classes would start again. As the year went by, she never got better, and families started to leave the lake houses in fear that they would get sick, and for fear that their kids were not going to learn anything for a long time. Mama ignored them. So did I. I played all by myself. I was 16 now, and my blonde hair was starting to get long and wavy. Mom had not had time to cut it lately, and I did not trust myself to cut it well enough. I started to think more now that I was older. I had this dream one night. I slept in the living room to give my sister her privacy. She did not want me to see her sick, and I honored her request. Soon we were the only family left at the lake. I did not understand the other silly people, but then I got to thinking, how did my sister get sick in the first place? That is when I went for a swim, and it hit me. No one ever drank water from the faucets here at the lake, except I can remember one day looking through our house window when I was playing with my friends in the lake. My mama had given a glass of water to my sister. Maybe she did not know that it would make her sick. So I ran out of the lake and into my house. I ran straight for my sister's room and barged in. I saw my mom sitting on a wooden bucket. My sister was not in sight. I furrowed my brows and then looked to my mother. Maybe my sister was in the loo. "Mom, do not give her water. It makes her sick," she said, nodding her head as she looked at her mother. "That is why she is not better. The water from the faucet is making her sick." My mother nodded but did not turn to look at me. "Yes, I know," she said, mixing a yellow substance in a wooden bowl. I was about to ask my mother what it was that she was making when she stood up and walked towards my sister's closet. The stuff she was making was forgotten on the little tea party table. I tilted my head. I had the urge to walk into the room further to follow my mother, but I could not. I just stood still in the doorway. waiting for my mother to come back. She opened the closet. It was dark. Even outside it was dark. The sky was gloomy. I had never noticed that when I was swimming. Maybe it was going to rain today. We had not had rain in almost 15 years. It would be a good change. I heard a gasp as my mother started to pull something out of the closet. The gasp sounded like it had come from my sister. But why would she be in the closet? It would just be a silly thing. Well, maybe my sister had gotten better. And to show it to me, they wanted to do something fun and silly. I figured I should play along with the game. I closed my eyes. I heard walking and dragging. B. Ooh. I heard the letter of my first name. It was the first time I heard my sister's voice in over 2 years. It was weak and painful, confused. I opened my eyes. I gasped as I looked at the horrific sight in front of me. My body was shaking. What was going on? My eyes met with my sister's. In her neck, there was a crowbar. My mother turned to me and took the bar out of my dying sister. I know the water makes her sick. Dear one, that is why I gave it to her. She is dying, and I am killing her. I stared horrified at my mother, tears stinging my eyes. My mother smiled. My sister was wearing a red shirt-type dress. My mother smiled and started to unbutton the buttons, starting at the bottom. I did not want to see what was going to happen. So I turned and ran down the stairs. I thought I was running fast. Maybe I was not going that fast. Everything was a blur to me. Maybe I blacked out for a while. Because the next thing that I remember was running out of the house. I turned to look up at the window where my old room was, but my eyes caught sight of the tree next to the house. Up there in it, I saw my sister. At first I thought she was alive and looking at me for help. Then I caught sight of the rope. She was tied, standing up tall. A crowbar was in her neck once more. I cried out as her straight light brown hair fell around her. Her eyes were open and staring at me. I ran, fearing my mother was going to come for me. I stumbled across an old, rustic, metal shed. There was a black woman I had never seen before. You need to go away, or she will come after you. Where do I go? Across the lake. It is the only safe place. I looked to the woman, and then ran as fast as I could towards the lake. I dove in off the dock. The lake was miles long, with no stopping, or you will drown. They were words that kept me going. I had to get to safety and call the cops. I needed to get my sister's body back. So I swam and swam. I looked back once and saw my mother coming out of the house. I swam faster and looked back no more. It was a dark and stormy night, and Rachel and Tom were driving towards an abandoned house on the lake. The house had been abandoned for decades and was said to be haunted. Despite the rumors, they had decided to spend the night there, hoping to find something of value to take back home with them. Rachel was a thrill seeker, and Tom was an amateur ghost hunter, so they thought it would be a fun adventure. As they drove closer, they could see the old, decrepit house in the distance. The windows were boarded up, and the roof was caving in. It was as if the house was trying to tell them to turn back and never return, but they were determined to imagine and visualize what was inside. Once they entered the house, they were met with a musty smell and an eerie feeling. The walls were covered in peeling paint and cobwebs, and the floorboards creaked with every step they took. They had brought flashlights, but the batteries were rapidly dying, adding to the fear that was building inside them. As they examined the house, they heard strange noises and whispers. They thought it was just the wind, but then they heard a loud bang, and they both froze. Suddenly, the door behind them slammed shut, trapping them inside. They tried to open the door, but it would not budge. They were stuck, and knew they had to find a way out. They searched every room, but all the windows were boarded up, and the only door through which they had come was locked. They were trapped, and they knew that they had to find a way out. But as they continued to explore and research further, they found a hidden room in the basement. The room was filled with old diary entries. newspaper clippings, and pictures of a family that had lived in the house many years ago. They read the diary entries, written by the mother of the family. She wrote about the difficulties of raising her children, the hardships of life in a small town, and her husband's mysterious disappearance. As they read the diary entries, they realized that the family had been murdered by one of their own. The murderer had fled into the lake, never to be seen again. The diary entries stopped abruptly, and they wondered what had happened to the family. They were filled with a sense of dread, knowing that the murderer was still out there, somewhere. Just as they were about to leave the room, the door slammed shut again, and they heard the murderer's ghostly voice whisper, "You should have never come here." They were paralyzed with fear, not knowing what to do next. They heard footsteps coming closer and closer, and they knew that they had to hide. They found a small closet and crouched inside, holding their breath and trying to be as quiet as possible. The footsteps grew louder and closer, and they heard the killer's ragged breathing. The doorknob turned, and they held their breath, praying they would not be found. But the footsteps suddenly stopped, and they heard a terrifying scream. They waited, not daring to leave the closet, and heard something moving in the room. They were trapped, and knew they had to find a way out. In a panic, they looked for a way out, but all the doors were locked. They were trapped, and knew the only way out was to get into the lake. They took a deep breath and dove into the dark, icy water. As they swam to the surface, they finally reached the shore, exhausted and soaking wet. They ran back to their car, not daring to look back at the house. They were relieved to be out of the haunted house, but they were also terrified, because they knew they had narrowly escaped with their lives. As they drove away, they both felt uneasy, as if they were being watched. They could not shake the feeling that the murderer's spirit still haunted them, and they knew they had to find a way to break the curse. They spent the next few weeks researching the history of the house and the family who had lived there. They learned that the murderer's spirit still haunted the house and the lake, taking revenge on anyone who dared to enter. They also learned that the spirit was said to be able to possess anyone who got too close, and they were terrified that they were now cursed. They went to a spiritualist, who told them that the only way to break the curse was to find the killer's remains and give them a proper burial. They were skeptical, but knew they had to try. They returned to the house and went into the lake to look for the remains of the killer. When they searched the lake, they found a small old chest. They opened the chest and found a journal, along with a skeleton. They knew they had found the killer's remains, and they gave the remains a proper burial, breaking the curse. As they drove away from the lake, they both felt a sense of peace. They were no longer haunted by the ghost, and they knew they were free at last. They decided never to return to the haunted lake house, but they would always remember the terrifying adventure they had lived through. One night, a small group of my close friends and I heard about an old lake house just outside of town. Maybe 1 to 2 hours away. We all made up our minds to go check it out over break and stay the night there. We told our parents that we were going to visit my Aunt Kelly, who lives close to the lake house. She was the one who told me about it, but she also warned me never to go up there. She said that some kids went camping there one weekend, and 2 weeks later, they were found dead. Everybody believed they had been murdered, but no one was alive to tell the story about the lake house. However, I am here to tell the story of the lake house and what happened up there the night my friends were killed in cold blood. My name is Evan Hartman, and this is the story of the lake house. The lake is called Missouri Lake. It was discovered in the 1950s, but no one knows why they named it that. People tried to build houses and settlements there, but every time they tried, people died. The cops suspected that someone was killing those who attempted to build there, likely because of the lake house up in the hills. The hill is called Blood Hill, only because from far away, it looks as if there is blood everywhere. It is really creepy. I went up there once to check it out, and it scared me, but all my friends wanted to go. If only I had listened to my heart when it told me this was wrong. We should have never gone up there in the first place, because those 3 days were hell. I felt like I met the devil himself and wondered what I had done wrong to be put through that nightmare. Why would anyone do this? They could not have been human. They were monsters, soulless beings. I looked into the killer's eyes that last night and saw nothing. Whoever he was at one point was gone forever. All that was left was his body. His soul had left him, and a monster had taken over. I wish Tess had never left the group and wandered off on her own. Why she did that, I have no idea. She always loved walking off and exploring on her own. It can be fun, but when you find one of your friend's bodies and still decide to walk off alone, then you are either crazy or just dumb. Mo should have gone with her. I do not know why he did not. Mo was Tess's boyfriend. They had been together since middle school and had stayed strong all the way through high school. They were the kind of couple everyone wanted to be. I will admit, I was always a little jealous of them. I was never good at relationships. They always ended in heartbreak. Eventually I gave up on love altogether because I could never find the one guy who made me feel like I could just be myself and have fun. Anyway, I asked my mom if I could borrow her Jeep to drive up there. She told me if I messed up her car, she would mess up my face, and she meant it. I promised her I would take care of it, and told her I loved her. Then, I went to pick up Tess and Mo. After that, we got Finn. He was the guy everyone loved to hang out with. Silly, goofy, but undeniably cute. I had a bit of a crush on him, but honestly, I think everyone in the group did. However, I knew Jenny wanted him the most, but she wanted every guy she could get. To this day, I do not even know why we were friends with her. She was a total bitch. Oh, I remember now. It was because Finn's best friend, Jason, was Jenny's boyfriend, and everybody loved Jason. So we put up with his awful girlfriend. Then, there were Jamie and Luke. They were a weird couple. Jamie was funny, crazy, and always ready to have fun, while Luke was nice but hated being wild. Somehow, they always made it work. Tess, Mo, Finn, Jenny, Jason, Jamie, and Luke, all my close friends. May you all rest in peace. At least you do not have to remember the pain and everything that happened during those 3 nights of hell. Day 1. The arrival. The drive up was smooth, but the air grew heavier. The closer we got, by the time we reached Blood Hill, a thick fog rolled over the lake, swallowing the trees in the distance. The house stood there, old and forgotten, its wooden frame barely holding together. It reeked of damp wood and something else, something foul. We shrugged off the unease, joking about ghosts as we set up for the night. We had brought sleeping bags, flashlights, and enough snacks to last us the weekend. But as the sun dipped behind the hills, the laughter faded. The first thing we noticed was the sound. It started as faint scratching from inside the walls, then whispers too soft to make out, but too real to ignore. Finn swore it was the wind, but I saw the way his hands trembled. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the front door. Mo, always the brave one, swung it open. Nothing, just the dark woods beyond, but something was wrong. The air felt thick, like something was standing right in front of us, watching. Tess was the first to say it. We should leave. We should have listened. Day 2. The first death. That night, we barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like something was moving around us. At some point, Tess shook me awake. "Where sits Jenny?" she whispered. Jenny had been sleeping right next to Jason. Now, her sleeping bag was empty. The front door was wide open. We grabbed our flashlights and searched the house. Nothing. Then, Luke yelled from outside. We ran to the dock, where he stood frozen, staring at the water. There she was, Jenny floating face down in the lake. Her skin was pale, her limbs twisted unnaturally. Jason broke down screaming her name, but I knew she was gone. Then, we saw it. A figure stood on the other side of the lake, just beyond the tree line. It was tall, too tall, its limbs long and wrong, its head tilted, as if it were listening. Then, it disappeared. We ran back inside and locked the doors. We should have left then, but something was keeping us there. Day 3. The horror unfolds. By morning, Jason was gone too. His shoes were still by the door, his phone on the table, but no sign of him. Panic set in. We tried the Jeep, but it wouldn't start. Luke swore he saw something moving under the hood before the battery died. Tess and Mo argued about what to do. Jamie was crying. Finn and I stood by the window, watching the tree line. The figure was still there, closer this time. Watching. Then Tess did the worst thing she could have done. She left. "I'm not staying here," she said, storming off into the woods. Mo ran after her. They never came back. The final night. By nightfall, only 4 of us were left. Finn, Janie, Luke, and me. We stayed together, too scared to move. The whispers had turned into voices now, calling our names. The walls pulsed as if something was inside, breathing. Then the door burst open. It wasn't Stet, Tess, or Mo. It wasn't Stet, Jason, or Jenny. It was him, the thing from the woods. It had no eyes, just hollow sockets that oozed darkness. Its mouth stretched too wide, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. It didn't walk. It glided toward us. Luke grabbed a knife, but before he could do anything, the thing grabbed him. His scream cut through the house as it dragged him into the darkness. Jamie and Finn ran. I followed, but the house wouldn't let us leave. The hallways stretched endlessly, doors leading to nowhere. The whispers grew into deafening screams. I don't remember how I got out. I only remember running through the woods, past the lake, through the fog. The thing chased me, but just before it could grab me, the sun started to rise. And then, silence. The aftermath. I woke up in a hospital. A hiker had found me on the side of the road, covered in blood that wasn't mine. They never found my friends. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Nothing. The lake house was gone, as if it had never been there. The cops said we must have gotten lost, that I must have imagined things. But I know the truth. Something lives in those woods. It doesn't just kill, it erases. My friends never got to tell their story, but I just did. And if you ever hear about Missouri Lake, stay away.